Hello, welcome to the Blythe Business News. Today we're joined by Nigel Robinson, CEO, and Gavin Ferrar, CFO of Central Asia Metals. Welcome both.
Hi, Megan.
Hey, Megan.
Nigel, we'll start with you. You've recently released your interim results. Can you give us an overview of the operational performance?
Yeah, I'd love to, Megan. Thanks. The first half of this year, so that's the period from January, obviously, to the end of June 2024, we've had a pretty robust period on the operational side of things. If I take an overview, Kounrad, first of all, we produced 6,608 tons of copper in fairly challenging weather conditions over the winter. The leaching's performing well in line with our plans. In fact, in some cases, better than we'd planned for. So that's all positive. And I think we're on track for meeting our guidance this year, which is 13 to 14,000 tons of cathode copper. So that's all really positive. I think at SASA, it's also positive, but I think it's been more challenging at SASA. There's a lot going on at SASA at the moment. We'll come on to some of the other aspects outside of actual production on a day-to-day basis. But we are, as you know, Megan, transitioning to paste fill mining and cut and fill mining. That's going well. But a combination of having to do that as well as the old sub-level caving and everything that's going on in the mine was slightly below some of the tonnages we'd hoped to achieve in the first half. Although we did always say this would be a challenging year and that we would expect to produce more in the second half of the year. And I can tell listeners that that is the case as we sit here today. So in the first half of this year, we produced 9,014 tons of zinc in concentrate and 12,872 tons of lead in concentrate. We're confident that we're in line for the lower end of our guidance. And again, just to remind readers, listeners, should I say, sorry, that's 19,000 to 21,000 tons of zinc for this year and 27 to 29,000 tons of lead for the year. But as I say, there are challenges with this transition as we move into paste fill and cut and fill mining. The other thing, lastly, I must say, actually, is that we've done that in a very safe environment, Megan. We sadly had one LTI. It was not a serious one, but it was an incident nonetheless. And we strive for zero harm at the workplace, as you know, and that leaves us with what's known as an LTIFR of 0.8 for the period.
Great, thank you. You mentioned the transition to the new mining method. Can you just provide us with a little bit more detail on that?
Yes, in terms of finishing off the infrastructure on site, there's three aspects to the transition. There's the paste backfill plant and the associated reticulation. There's the dry stack tailings plant and the associated landform on which we'll put the dried tailings. And the final bit is the central decline. All three projects are going well. The paste backfill plant is now fully commissioned and operational. In fact, we poured in the first half of this year 130,000 tons of paste into voids, basically, which is what we plan to do. So that's going well. We are actually operating in terms of cut and fill and long hole stoping with paste as well. But most of the paste that we're pouring at the moment is going into the voids. So that aspect of the infrastructure and moving into operations is pretty well advanced. On the dry stack tailings, less so. We're still finishing off the plant. We've completed some of the groundworks for the landform where, as I say, the dry stack material will be placed. And that's well advanced to finish in the second half of this year. And finally, obviously, the central decline is progressing well. We went through the 800 level. We expect to be at the 750 level by the end of this year. So going well, but a lot of work on site, as you can imagine. So balancing production off with completing the infrastructure work as everything else is a challenge for the management team, but I think they're doing a good job of it.
Great, thank you very much for that, Nigel. And Gavin, moving to you, can you give us an overview of the financial results, please?
Of course, Megan. We had a really good H1 of 2024, and particularly when we compare it to H1 2023, we were up on revenue by around 4% to $103.8 million. EBITDA stayed more or less flat over the period on period, but free cash flow has gone up substantially to $30 million versus a lower number last time because we paid a little bit of withholding tax in that first half last year, which made the difference there. Secondly, balance sheet really strong. We have no debt and $56.3 million of cash in the bank. And it's this strong balance sheet that's provided the basis for a solid financial performance. We once again returned excellent value for our shareholders by declaring an interim dividend of 9 pence per share, which represents around 70% of that free cash flow number that I mentioned earlier.
Great, thank you. Staying with you, Gavin, you've also had quite a busy period when it comes to business development. Can you give us some more detail on that?
Yeah, we've been very, very active in the first half of the year. I think we've looked at about 23 opportunities in terms of finding that transformational deal that we've always been looking for. But more importantly, Well, just as importantly, we've got an investment into Aberdeen Minerals, which is a Scottish explorer looking for copper and nickel up in Scotland. We've invested £3 million in that business, which gave us a 28.7% shareholding. And we also have the option to invest another £2 million to take us up to about 39% of that business as well. Early indications from exploration, which has just started this last summer, are pretty good, with some massive sulfides appearing in the drill core, so we're very excited about that. And our CAML X subsidiary, which is the exploration that we're conducting in Kazakhstan, that's now been formally established. We've had a first summer of exploration going on there, which is focused really on target generation, but we've also got about 4 licenses there and have done some initial field work on those licenses as well. Kazakhstan is highly prospective, as you know, so we're fairly confident that these exploration activities are going to bear some fruit. We have a fantastic team out there, and we're giving them all the resources they need to hopefully give them the best chance of success that we can. All of the business development we do, people should continue to note, it's got to generate value for shareholders. So we analyze all of these things to make sure that they're accretive to our existing shareholder base as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And moving on to ESG, you've always traditionally had really strong ESG credentials. Can you give us a few highlights from the period?
Yeah, as Nigel mentioned, we unfortunately suffered that one LTI at SASA this year. We've had no LTIs at Kounrad since 2018, which is a fantastic result. And we clearly continue to strive to improve that LTI all the time. So, in our sustainability report that we published in April, I think we had a target of 1.2 as IFR rate, LTIFR rate. I think it's currently sitting at 0.8, so it's a great result. The GISTM, which is the global industry standard for tailings management, that is a new standard which we voluntarily adopted. We achieved conformance for that just post the period end, which again, just pays a lot of credit goes to the team at SASA and at the head office for getting our SASA tailings dams to conform with those standards, which are fairly stringent. And we've had several audits around those tailings dams as well, showing that we're doing a great job there. And lastly, but not least, this is the first period we've really operated the Kounrad solar power plant for the whole 6 months. And what we've achieved there is that power plant has generated about 15% of our power needs at SASA, which is going a long way towards reducing our greenhouse gas emissions at that asset.
Great, thank you very much for that. And lastly from you, what can we expect for the rest of the financial year?
Well, again, we're on track to meet copper production guidance. With those challenges Nigel mentioned at SASA, we're probably going to end up at the lower end of guidance for the lead and zinc production. So, hopefully still within that guidance zone. But the continued transition to paste fill mining, we're really reaching the final stretch on that. So dry stack tailings plant will be completed this year. We should be stacking paste the sort of dry stack paste onto the landform before the end of the year. And the central decline will get down to the 750 level in the fourth quarter this year as well. Management team succession, very important. I think we made an announcement a couple of months ago on that. I'll be taking over CEO, very proud to be taking that role, with Louise stepping up to the CFO, Nigel transitioning into a board role. And I think we should just take the opportunity to thank Nigel for his tremendous contribution to the business as CEO for the last 6.5 years, and prior to that as CFO since the IPO, really. So fantastic innings, Nigel. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you, Gavin. And yeah, Nigel, just to finish with you, as Gavin just mentioned, this will be your last results as CEO. Just tell us why you think the business is in a great place for success in the future.
Yeah, well, thanks, first of all. Thanks, Gavin, for those kind words. It's quite an emotional time for me in some ways. And as you say, it is my final set of results after probably 15.5 years as CFO and CEO. But I do believe the business is in a very strong position. We have a strong executive team. We have a strong team behind that executive team, both at Kounrad and at SASA and corporately. Our balance sheet is strong. Our cash flows are strong. We're looking for the right metals. I do believe that we'll eventually get over the line on this transformational business development opportunity we've been looking for some time. And I think we're in a strong position for that, because we've not got any debts on the books, and we have cash. And I think we've got a good following in the city with a good track record. So I do believe the business is in a good shape. It's great that I'm, you know, Nick Clark, the chairman, has asked me on the board to stay on as a non-executive director to support Gavin and Louise in the transition, and support the business as well. And, you know, I'm very passionate about the business we've built up over the past 15, 16 years. And I'm delighted to be staying on board to help as best I can as we go from, hopefully, you know, even into a stronger position and get a third asset to bolster Kounrad and SASA. So, as I say, emotional. I'd like to thank everybody, you know, who's listening on here. I'd like to thank all the board. I'd like to thank my management team. Certainly like to thank all the stakeholders and shareholders for the support they've given me personally over the years, as we've built CAML up into a strong business, and yeah, positive future, I believe.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Megan.